This is a special place.
Bunyip.
Oh, there's no such thing as bunyips. Stop! Oh! A used condom! Ah!
Hi, Fiends. Thanks for joining me on DonnaJean's Coffee House of Horror. And I am delighted to have a couple of folks with me that we've been talking about this for a little bit, and we're going to talk about a film I'm really excited about coming out. But I'm here with David Black and Anastasia C. Kouloukas. Did I get it correctly?
Yes, you did. Perfectly.
Yay!
Hey!
Thank you both for being here. Stasi, before you came on, I was telling David that I was so excited to have you both on because when you and I did our interview previously, you spoke so fondly of him. And in his and my correspondence, he speaks so fondly of you. And it is just so wonderful to have you here together to talk about this film, Badass Bunyip. Am I saying Bunyip right?
Yes.
Yes.
Now I have to tell you, I believe you were still filming it or were in the process of it when we talked before. So I had to look up what is a bunyip after your and my last interview. And I didn't remember for this one, so I had to look it up again.
Fair enough.
So,
Yeah.
So a bunyip is from mythology from the Aborigines, is that correct?
Yep.
Yes, yeah. Although I don't know if it's mythology. That's why, because there's newspaper reports of sightings that go back to the 1850s. Whereas you've got one picture, the different artists that have drawn them have drawn wildly different creatures. So nobody really knows what one looks like. But what they do know is that it's usually in water, sometimes still waters like a billabong, but could be a swamp. So it's an aquatic creature, but they don't know what it looks like. They just know that it's murderous. That
is what I noticed. I pulled up a bunch of photos. This one actually looks kind of like a giant cat. But there's so many of them that it was like a madcap frenzy of putting together different parts of different creatures.
Yep. So when it came down to actually what will ours look like, I did find somebody had made a costume, a very elaborate costume. And I asked our SFX artist, could she do something similar? And she said yes. So I didn't really design one myself. But if I had have been able to design something and we had have had the budget, I was thinking somewhere close to Creature of the Black Lagoon.
Ah, okay. And, from it being aquatic and deadly and all of that, it would make sense.
It would, although I did want to get into the psychology of a bunyip and found that from what I've read, I don't think they've got any psychology. So we've just written that it's, what was it? No hope,
No
no
rhyme, no reason, just rampage.
Yeah, no rhyme, no reason, no chance.
That's the one.
Okay. So this, if it goes back to the Aborigines, is it something that would, the storyline goes within that culture then?
We have done that quite a bit. And that's where I've got to stop everything and explain. When it comes down to Aboriginal culture, I don't know if Anastasia got brought up the same as me, because there's a big age difference. I'm 57, you're 25?
26.
Is that right? 26. Yeah.
Yes.
It's your fault for
that I
getting
was
older.
26.
I was correct last year, but
yes.
But yeah, we got shown a lot of films and documentaries about Aborigines, but it was nearly always about Aborigines from Arnhem Land in the Northern Territory. The tribe that's around here is called the Wurundjeri.
Yeah.
And the Wurundjeri, their languages, the amount of languages to start with from one end of Australia to the other, Aboriginals had a lot of different languages, a lot of cultures, and their dream time and their beliefs and their laws are different from one tribe to another, although quite often similar with a tribe that's next door. But I really clicked onto it when I watched a documentary that was called The Last Aboriginal. It was about the last Aboriginal to come into modern society. And the reason why he was the last was because he'd actually run off from his tribe with a woman that he loved, because him loving her and wanting to be with her was against their tribal law. They got chased by their tribe who wanted to kill them, and only got away because they got onto another tribe's land that just stood there and said, yeah, he broke your law, but that's not our law. In other words, the tribe next door's law was radically different to theirs. So when we put together Australia and an Aboriginal culture for our film, our Aboriginal culture that I put together is bits and pieces from different tribes. It's not the Aboriginal law of the Wurundjeri. But the history I put in, where you, Anastasia, mentioned that the native Aboriginals have been taken away and the men put on sealing boats, that's actually part of the real history.
In the Bass Strait.
Yeah. In fact, that's exactly what happened to the tribe whose sacred area we were in. So I gave their real history.
That's so fascinating. It really is. And speaking for somebody who's always lived in the United States, I know very little about the Aborigines. And yet I can kind of liken it to, because you can have different towns, different cities speak the same language, but because of slang, the culture, even within the US from town to town, can be very different. And so I'm kind of likening it to that, but it's fascinating to me because I know nothing about it. So,
oh, in a way, it's even more radically different. I mean, the stuff I'm about to say, maybe even Anastasia doesn't know. But when we're brought up in Australia, we're always shown naked Aboriginals in the heat. You know, have you noticed, Anastasia?
That's all I've ever seen being in the US, other than for a couple of movies that I've seen. You know, that's
well,
really all I've seen.
Melbourne's too cold to run around nutty in the winter. And
they'd have rubber fur skins.
No, possum. Possum.
Oh my God, yeah, passport.
The
Because
main
rabbits were an infestation.
Yeah, the main thing that they really treasured here was a cloak made out of possum skins. But I've seen a picture of a guy and he's actually got trousers made out of possum skins. So this is one of the fellas that was quite rich, so to speak. Not that there's such a thing as a rich Aboriginal culture where what's mine is yours, but he'd made a vest and pants and a cloak out of possum skins. So for winter, they were quite warm. But as for things people associate with Aboriginals everywhere, not every Aboriginal tribe had boomerangs. Not every Aboriginal tribe had didgeridoos. And they certainly didn't have the same customs. So, yeah, I made up a fake one, though, because I didn't want to be the spokesman for any tribe, because for one, that's really in bad taste. And with a lot of the stuff going on about cultural misappropriation, etc., I just thought, on the whole, what would be a believable culture for Aboriginals? And considering there's probably a few thousand of them here, I think that was a fair approach. But it's one I expect to get in trouble about.
You don't want to insult anybody by having it be too close to a reality and yet have it believable. So it sounds like that was a really wise approach.
Yeah, because I know I was thinking about it and I was like, because normally like you hear like you have whenever you even have anything to do with another culture, you usually have to consult everyone and do that stuff. But I think the way you did it was really good because like the likelihood of someone being offended is
100% anyway. We talked about this at the beginning of the film. This is before you're on it. When I decided I wanted Mimi spirits in it. By the way, the local Aboriginals don't have Mimi spirits. They're something from Arnhem Land.
Oh.
So when we were going to have the Mimi spirits, there was a big conversation about are we going to get ourselves in trouble with cancel culture? And I said, we're going to anyway, but I brought up a story of why we may as well, as long as we've got our hearts in the right place and have thought it through and are not being assholes, I thought we may as well do what we bloody well want anyway and make our own film, simply because one of my favorite films actually did end up on the wrong side, so to speak. There's an Australian producer called Bruce Beresford, and he decided to make a film from an Aboriginal book called The Fringe Dwellers. I don't know if you've seen that film. It's from the 70s. I promise you it's brilliant. The Fringe Dwellers was written by an Aboriginal about the Aboriginal culture of Aboriginals living on the fringe of society. Bruce had a predominantly Aboriginal cast in it too. So this wasn't some white man's film. And the main song in the film was written by an Aboriginal, and it's a beautiful song. It's about the stolen generation. Now, this film came out like in 1974. Who the hell had heard about the stolen generation then? This film was amazing, and it went to Cannes. And at Cannes, a whole group of Aboriginal activists got up and walked out. And I thought to myself, okay, if you can have the perfect film made by Aboriginals for Aboriginals about Aboriginals, and somebody is still going to get
Aboriginal actors and Indigenous cast.
And I thought about it. I looked at it and I thought, hey, I'm Jewish. I've got a community. We've got people that want that. We've got people that you like your activists and that. And I realized I couldn't, like, I'd get away with making a Jewish film mainly because nobody would take any notice. But I thought if I was at a community meeting and I made a statement, there'd be 50 people that would be against me. And if I made the opposite statement, there'd be 50 people against me. So I thought, all you can do is know that what's in your heart is good, and then go and express yourself artistically your way. And after that, what's in people's minds is their business. If they want to cancel us, great. We're nobodies. You can't cancel nobodies. What you do is you cancel, you take the biggest, you take the biggest star out like Johnny Depp, and then you can cancel him. He can lose something that's big, but all you can do with people that are at the bottom like us is draw attention to us. Did you ever hear of the Reverend Fred Nile?
No.
He was our Christian guy that used to burn records and was against heavy. Yeah, big bonfires burning heavy metal records. And he was the one that used to get all the media attention. And every time he decided that he objected to a band, wow, that band suddenly got known.
Wildfire.
Exactly.
Yeah. So all cancel culture can do for us is a great big favor. So we can't be cancelled. What it would be is if we set out to do something nasty and felt bad inside because we see ourselves as good people. We like to give to charity. We like to rise up the downtrodden. We're not. We have our own
justice.
Yeah, well, we've got our views of who we are. So that basically, as long as you're true to yourself, I think with Badass Bunyip that it will highlight Aboriginal culture, even though we made a fake one.
And actually,
nobody's done anything like this before.
It really sounds as though it could be something, certainly make people aware of the myth, if it's a myth, or my grandparents came from Scotland, so I grew up with my dad talking about the Loch Ness Monster, So is there something there or not there? But it sounds like something that a lot of people just may not have any idea anything about. So
same if they're Aussies.
Does see it and start looking into the Aborigines cultures, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing.
Well, the funny thing with the Bunyip doesn't actually fit Aboriginal culture. Yes, they talked about it, but when you start to learn about dreamtime spirits from one culture or another culture, they don't have anything mindless. They don't have some sort of killing machine. Everything seems to have a beauty about it that fits in some place into the cosmos. And if it's a dreamtime spirit, it's something from the never when. I don't know if that makes sense, but it'll be before the current time. It'll be something to do with the creation. The Bunyip just doesn't fit it. Now, the way we tend to get brought up in Australia when we're told about bunyips is we get these images of cute monsters. So you get a nice cute monster bunyip piggy bank.
I just realized, I just remembered Yowie.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yowie is
Yowie?
Bigfoot.
Yowie, that's how I know the bunyip, but even then it was just like very minor. So there was this was it like a cartoon TV show with there was like a yogurt and books of this Yowie character, and they all lived they looked like bunny rabbits, but they were massively tall with tails, and they were some of them were big and fat, some of them were small, and they were different colors, and they lived in swamps. That's what I knew about bunyips.
Oh, similar sort of cute imagery is what we got brought up with the piggy banks and that. And I think Yoram Gross, who's an animator, a children's animator, had a bunyip as well. So we get taught that there's a cute monster. It's not. It is. It's a murderous thing, and you can't talk to it. You can't plead with it. You can't do anything with it. It's just a killing machine. So we're probably the first to have actually depicted a bunyip as close as possible to any of the newspaper stories or to the Wikipedia article for that matter.
Yeah, I'm actually here and hearing about the cute monsters, and I'm going, we should have bunny yips here. How come we don't have bunny yips? But if there is more, it's like a killing machine aspect to it. I can't imagine why it hasn't been brought up in films before, because
Actually, you're right. Australia, most of our culture is dominated actually from American media anyway. So there is that aspect, but it hasn't stopped people from knowing about Ned Kelly. Has but I believe there's a lot about Aboriginal culture that people haven't seen. For instance, a beautiful Aboriginal film came out the other month. Rabbit Proof Fence. What's that? A year old
oh my
now?
gosh.
Oh,
I've
Rabbit Proof
seen
Fence.
that.
I remember seeing that when I was in high school.
I was so moved by that.
We watched that in high school for when we had our, because we did history, and it was really sad. And oh my
Oh
god,
my gosh, it was
It is.
devastating.
it's like, no,
But you
what
don't
are you
see
doing, man?
you don't see Aboriginal culture in it. What you do is you learn about the stolen generation, and you see these Aboriginal children on trying to make their way home. You
Now,
know,
wasn't the author, in the end, she's there, or a woman who is playing her, one of the children?
yes, I think the author was one of the children, but
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on the film, even though I watched it recently. I've watched a lot of films. I just thought there's nothing really of Australian culture in this, and Aboriginal culture. I think the last time I remember anything really touching on Aboriginal culture was Walkabout. Walkabout was probably the first time we ever even heard the word walkabout and knew that this was a rite of passage for Aboriginal people. First time I actually made fun of David Gulpilil's dancing as my character Dazza in our film. That's what I was doing when I offend the spirits and cause all of the problems.
So that's
So I'm
what
not.
causes the problems, is
Oh,
there's a mocking spirit dance.
well, possibly. Shazza also does something by accident that could have set it off. There's a, there's
A bit
enough
of that effect
things.
complex.
I think that I think our Aboriginal Kaditcha man. This is my opinion. People can work it out for themselves when it's finished, but I'll throw back to your opinion too, Anastasia. But I think our Aboriginal Kaditcha man just simply doesn't like white people. So they're just in the wrong place. I don't know if Shazza is the one that sets him off, or Gazza is the one that sets him off, or anybody actually does anything. He might just happen to be there and think, oh no, another couple of
white people again. How many more do I have to deal with? Let's get rid of them.
Yeah, that's a possibility. So I never give the motivation or the exact thing, but you can see that there is cause for him not to be too happy. I didn't bring up the Scooby-Doo moment where where it's
so fun.
all yeah, you meddling white people. I was going to rob that bank if only you hadn't come along. I didn't bring up that where it's all explained to everybody. Because life, nobody ever explains anything. You just go through it and you have to work out what the hell happens.
That's the truth.
But yeah, we've got our Kaditcha man. We've got the Mimi spirits. We've got the Bunyip. So, and then the rest of the culture there is a lot of Aussie bogan culture and things that people don't say in films anymore. Not that they don't say them in real life, but Aussies have a cultural cringe. So the minute they see Dazza and he says, God, I'm as dry as a dead dingo's donger. If this makes it big internationally, that's a cringe moment for Aussies.
It's like, oh no. You've been taking up the skeletons, the unmentioned skeletons in the closet.
I think the last time Aussie culture was depicted in all its rawness was the Barry Humphries movies in late 60s, early 70s, where he did Barry Mackenzie, or even his character Dame Edna is very Aussie. And Dame Edna is one of his characters in the Barry Mackenzie films. But outside of Barry Humphries, I don't think anybody's gone, warts and all, and depicted bogans in a film. So we're treading on a lot of toes with doing stuff that is 100% natural to us and around us, but not the stuff that Aussies really want to show anyone overseas.
Yeah, because it's like they want to have the image that's been projected so far, which is classy, I suppose. Not like that.
Not necessarily the real world that you live in. So,
well, just on my way to the shoot, this is the shoot with Anastasia on the first morning. I think I had to buy some muesli bars or whatever just for our munchies for the day. And I was thinking on my way to the supermarket, is this look I'm putting on Daz's face realistic? Right? And just as I'm crossing the street, there's a bogan there that actually had a mullet exactly like Daz's. He was dressed with shorts and, the cut-off shirt like Dazza, and he had the exact same look on his face. So I stopped and I watched him for a minute while not trying to look like I was staring, and I realized this is exactly what he was doing. Thank God he didn't see that I was looking at him, but I watched him for a few minutes and I thought, well, I thought that I had this over the top and it was ridiculous and maybe I should change it. But if I wasn't seeing this right now, I think that was somebody copying Dazza. So I realized, what I was doing that came natural for doing this wasn't taking what's there and exaggerating it. There are a lot of people like that. So we have used our two main characters, in my opinion, are quite realistic for bogans.
Now, you and Stasi play the two main characters. Are your characters that you somehow wander into this situation where you kind of come across the bunyip, or is it something that you were like trying to summon this mythological creature?
Believe it or not, even though the film's out in a few weeks, it's a Christmas movie. And Dazza...
That's right. You did tell me about working on a Christmas horror movie.
It is. I'm starting to hear now that it's not unusual for me to release it in July. They talk about Christmas in July.
Christmas in July.
That's a new one for me. But in our film, Dazza has invited Shazza for a Christmas picnic. And he really just wants to get her to some place where nobody else is, so that, because he's hoping to get a bit. He's got that on his mind, although he's got no charm whatsoever. So in knowing that in this very built up area, there's a spot in the park, what he probably doesn't know is that it's a sacred Aboriginal ground. Now, it sounds stupid to have a sacred Aboriginal ground in the middle of a city, but that's what actually clicked me off to choosing that site and this idea for the film. There actually is a sacred Aboriginal site in the middle of the city. I mean, I was on the tram.
It wasn't always the city, clearly. It wasn't always the city.
What's happened is it was all native bushland at one time, and bit by bit by bit, society has built up, and you've gone from lots of shacks and farms to townships to eventually surrounded. This tiny little native patch of bushland is surrounded by skyscrapers on one side, a giant sports stadium on the other side. If you get to the next side, you've got this very busy road, St Kilda Road, the Punt Road Junction, which is like multi-level with trams going up and down and everything. And when you get to the back, where we've entered it from, there's a big shopping strip called Fitzroy Street. It's probably got about 2 supermarkets, a couple of nightclubs, 30 restaurants, God knows what. So it's all just bit by bit by bit. And there's this tiny little native piece of bushland. Now, I always knew it was there, but I didn't know in a way it was there. I just thought it was a park. I've passed by it a million times, and I'm on the tram one day, and an Aboriginal lady is on the tram, and she starts speaking very softly, and I realize that she's speaking to me. So I've looked, and what she's talking about is the Nagaji tree. And just as she's mentioned the Nagaji tree, she's pointed, and we actually at that exact moment are passing the Nagaji tree. What she had told me is the story of the native piece of bushland and the sacred tree, and that it's over there. Well, it stayed in my mind for ages. And when I realized, look, I walked past it a lot, and it's 5 or 10 minutes up the road. I walked up there. And when I walked up there, there's a big sign saying Native Bushland Reservation. You look up and you go, oh, there's skyscrapers and everything. You take 2 or 3 steps in, and as soon as the trees are higher than the skyscrapers and everything, you look and you think, my God, I could be in the outback. They've got logs to mark out the paths. It looks like it should have a gift shop in it, but you can get about 10 steps in, and there's 10 steps where you don't see any skyscrapers, 10 steps out where you don't see any. From walking from the start to the finish, what would it be? 100 steps, Anastasia?
At least 100, yeah.
Yeah, it's not very big. So I thought, what if there was a bunyip in there? Because it certainly was a sacred tree. Now, it's not a forbidden site like we've said in the film. A forbidden site is if there's something of secret men's business or secret women's business.
Yeah.
And only the initiated are allowed in. What this is a site you're allowed to, but you should respect it. Now, we did no damage in there. And I did have to have Dazza making fun of the customs of the Aboriginals in order to create this story. And compared to what we've highlighted about what's happened to Aboriginal people in the past, that's absolutely nothing. We've unfortunately in Australia got a shocking history, just like they're finding out in Canada. If you've seen the news today,
oh my God.
175, they've got their stolen generation, we've got ours. America, they talk about slavery. Our film is the first one to talk about Aboriginal slavery. It's absolutely unknown. And so most people think it didn't happen. And when I started looking up that exact spot we're in, and the Woi Wurrung tribe of the Wurundjeri Nation, which is the tribe that area is sacred to, it said the men were taken off to slavery. Maybe not all, but enough. Aussies get told a bit about slavery, but they're told about the Kanakas who were made slaves on the sugar cane farms up in Queensland.
It's such a, I think certainly for our country, it's so painful to think that we live in a country, in a world where we allowed human beings to be treated as though they were not human beings. I guess the way some people deal with it is by wanting to just kind of, say it was generations ago and kind of pretend it didn't happen. But you can't do that.
No, you can't. I can't turn around and say, look, I am very proud of Australian culture. I want to say that straight up, because but at the same time, it's a painful growth. It's a painful growth because we all know that this land was taken from the Aboriginal peoples, and we know that we haven't had a treaty yet.
Yeah.
It's not that Aboriginal people aren't asking for it. My favourite song, Yothu Yindi.
Yeah.
Yothu Yindi's song. Treaty.
Treaty.
Yeah. Now, how old is Yothu Yindi's song now? I mean, the man that sang it and wrote it has actually passed away about 5 years ago. Despite having a #1 hit, he passed away in what they nicely say is a roadside camp, but in reality, it's just people with no homes sleeping in the street. So I've forgotten his name, Dr. Yunupingu or something like that. I've mispronounced it. But yeah, he put out a song. I heard it on the radio. I heard it on the television. This land was never given, and they're demanding a treaty now. Nobody disagrees with that. Nobody I know, at least, disagrees with it. It's what, 30 years later, no treaty. So we've got a lot of unresolved issues. We've got a terrible past. The film does bring that up, but it's not a film that's made in order to bring it up. It's made to be a fun, schlocky horror movie.
That inspires you to possibly look up.
Well,
but if it makes people aware of something enough to look into it, though,
yeah,
it just might open up another world for people that didn't know that it was there. You know, it's in the U.S., it's our, Native Americans.
Well, there's no people with a good history to start with. I mean, sometimes we want to take victims of something terrible and put them on a pedestal and say that they were all fantastic. But the history of Aboriginal tribe to Aboriginal tribe and the things that are done when I start hearing Aboriginal stories, basically we're all human, and the human experience has not been a pleasant one. We've got a lot of work on ourselves and our societies to do. Being a social justice warrior wasn't the idea behind the film, and it's social justice warriors that are going to come after us anyway.
Yeah, but you can't probably hide the fact that there's that part in you.
No, I can't. But my motivation in originally doing the film was Gerardo, who edited it and filmed it. I asked him, what do you want to do next? And he said, I want to do something Australian. So I came up with this. I remember after we finished filming the first time, this is before we reshot all of the main scenes with Anastasia, I was really proud, and I said, well, we've done something Australian. What do you reckon? And he looked at me and said, I don't like horror. So he wanted to do an Aussie film, but not necessarily a horror.
Aww.
Well, that's it for part 1 of Badass Bunyip interview, where Stasi and David and I talk about Aborigines mythology, culture, human nature, and Badass Bunyip. We talked about bunyips. Join us for part 2 this coming Saturday. See you then.